It is the sixth model introduced in the OG ZOIDS collaboration and the first introduced in the 2024 Rerun lineup. It is ZID05, the Sting, with a kit of Break Rush, Double Break Claw, multi-legs, and a brand new leg ability called Compression, which grants the anchor effect to self when charging metaphors, which thus greatly boosts the damage from gravity attribute skills for the next turn one is used. Now, being based off the iconic Death Stinger model that in the original Zoids series, it only makes sense that Zoids has a lot of source material that Medarot could build on when it comes to converting models and kind of chibifying and designing them. But Scorpion is definitely not one I had on my particular list of possibilities and high potential candidates, but still a very welcome introduction all the same, with a very powerful gravity and heavy punish centric kit that it brings to the table. Break Rush on the head part is a gravity attribute skill that is compared to basic Break, which is a piercing type gravity skill. Break Rush is an AoE instead, which is a full damage all active parts on the target and equalize the damage across them. The only time this doesn't apply is, of course, if the enemy has a conceal effect applied or if a shield is intercepting the attack. But it also is well known for something else, and that is, of course, its excel in heavy punish. So if anyone is using, say, two or more heavy parts when attacking the enemy, they are most certainly going to be feeling the pain for packing on the extra weight, whereas one or none, probably not anything in the immediate. The same can be said for Break Claw on both arms, but instead of being a full AoE skill, it is a scatter type skill instead, which means it will damage one part normally and then two others randomly for additional damage. But both Break Claw and Break Rush have the same type of behaviors. That is the fact that they both excel into heavy punish, much like I said, but being gravity attribute also means that they get a bonus tied to their success relative to their metaphor charge. It is roughly, I believe, at times 1.5 and 2 at a 30% and 100% metaforce charge. Now, success is specifically something that is tied to your likelihood of landing hits, as well as critical hits on top of that. So if you want to make sure that your hits always land or are going to have a chance of landing just a little bit more aggressively, success is most certainly a skill you want to really focus on. And gravity makes sure that your hits are going to have a very consistent hit rate almost every time you go about them. Multi-legs means that D-Sting will have relatively decent coverage across all terrains, compared to Biped, which usually has a very diverse, higher speed but lower terrain compatibility. Multi-legs tend to usually trade a little bit of speed for better terrain cover, typically, unless it's a boss type or a collab where that rule does kind of go out the window. But with him packing a base mobility at 892, that is most certainly no problem for this little bottom crawler here with his multiple legs and the ability to scuttle back and forth across the field, and just about any field for that matter, without any real difficulty slowing him down. An evade of 942 isn't too terrible either, as it means he'll have a pretty decent time dodging or grazing as he can. That's assuming that he doesn't have any no dodge penalty on his cooldown or inflicted with something that prevents him from dodging. A melee resist of 1481 and a shoot resist of almost 1200 are pretty solid and well-rounded numbers, which means you can use them basically anywhere with no real drawback or penalty. He can fight people up close and personal, and he can take some pot shots from afar without getting taken down or sniped out too quickly. And with a heavy support of 3, he actually is going to be supporting some pretty solid parts across his rather heavy build. But it is quite hilarious that while he excels in heavy punish himself, he himself also is weak to it, with the triple heavy support and 3 heavy parts equipped. When it comes to armor, he's a pretty bulky boy as well, with a head armor of just shy of 5,000, arms about 4,500 each, and legs at just shy of 4,700. So it's going to be pretty tough to take this Death Stinger down once he is on the field and you do manage to attack him. But I do have to mention as well that his stats across the board really aren't too shabby either. With relatively solid heat and cool stats between the low 600s to high 600s, almost 700s in many cases, that paired with his base mobility in the high 800s, almost 900s, means he's not really going to have a speed problem all day. And with everything tied to success as far as his metaforce charge is concerned, he's really not going to have too much of an issue hitting or things missing or grazing him. All that being said, though, as a pure set score, I still unfortunately have to rate D-Sting a pretty middle-of-the-road 5.5 out of 10, and this was primarily me trying to be pretty generous with it. Primarily for the fact that while his kit is incredibly synergetic between Break Rush, Double Break Claw, and the Compression leg ability, which grants a damage bonus when he gets that Anchor stack to self, that is kind of all he's got going for him. He doesn't have any kind of coverage or alternative moves that he can use if Gravity Punish isn't really the thing that he can use. And if someone does bring something like Gravity Guard or a certain type of Metaforce Guard to the table that negates gravity skills, he's done. Like there's really nothing else that he can bring to the table that can redeem him if all his particular niches are being covered or countered. And between Break Rush and Break Claw, that because they're AoE or scattered stills, his damage is going to be kind of all over the place. So if he's fighting somebody who specializes in lightweight, he's really not going to be hitting all that hard, and he's going to be really relying on attacking foes that bring on the weight. Even with Compression giving him that damage bonus to kind of forgive it just a little bit, the high emphasis on collateral makes him really tricky. As mixed parts, though, I do have to rate him just a little bit higher at a 6 out of 10. Primarily for the reason that while Compression is something that is very heavily geared toward gravity attribute skills specifically, Break Rush, Wide Break, Break Claw, Press, or Break Hammer, or so on, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to build a kit entirely exclusive to it. Kind of like what they did with Arc BDT with the Sparkle leg ability, where he doesn't have to have all optic skills, but he can benefit from them if he needs to. But with that being said, though, it is still a very synergetic kit, but mixing up the parts is where you're going to be really getting the best bang for your buck. Whereas if you use Break Rush for the for the AoE heavy punish, or if you choose to use Break Claw for the scattered punish instead, it gives you a very free reign and a very flexible hand on how you choose to use parts. And with legs like his and the relatively high base mobility and resist stats he's packing, and the heavy support on top of that, this is a model that's honestly better off used as scattered parts across the team than using him as pure set.